I just want to go over the homework assignment for this module. So you should have gone through the tutorial and the textbook for the museum layout, and that's where you're really learning how to create a CSS style sheet. So previously you've attached a CSS style sheet, but now you're actually going through the steps of creating one and creating the styles and the code that will attach to your web page and will be uniform throughout your site. And then you've also learned how to use a template. And again, that's another way to keep the uniform design throughout your site. And then added selectors such as tag selectors, ID selectors, and then the class selectors. So in the homework assignment, and this is found in your textbook on page 214, the Portfolio Builder project, you'll download the club files from Against the Clock. And those files, I've got a previous student's site pulled up in Dreamweaver, but what you'll start out with is just the club text and then the PNG logo that the Against the Clock has provided. Here it is, the club logo PNG. So that's all that you will have to start with, and so you're going to use that logo, which looks like this, and you're going to create a site. So follow the directions in your textbook, but you want to make sure that you include 6 pages on this site, and so there's 6 pages. So one navigation subject will be a page. So if I view this in my browser, and you want to make sure you test your site and make sure that it's working and everything is linked. So this is the home page. Then there's some information, and this text is copied from the text that Against the Clock has provided for this homework assignment. Then you can go to the navigation in the header here to the personal development program page, summer tutoring, overnight adventures, volunteer enrichment, and career mentoring. So each page uses the same template. So each page has the same template design, the same colors, the same header, the same box areas, but the content changes. So each page has new content, and all the text is the text that is provided. The images, though, you have to find, and I have provided some links on our Google Plus community under the Happy Cloud resources. So here I've got some attribution-free stock image site links that you can go to. Some of these you'll have to sign up for membership. Some of them you have to pay for images. Some of them may be free, but you have to attribute the website where you got the images from. And there are tons of other ones out there, but these are just a few that I have linked that you can go to look for your stock photos. You can also use your own photos. You're welcome to take your own photos and upload those. Make sure that you check your images in Photoshop and that they're RGB with using web colors, and that you convert them so that you keep the file size down, and then use them, convert them to the size that you want them to be used on your final site. So let's go back and look at this site. This is the About page that I have pulled up, and there's also a template page, and you will create a template in the tutorial, and then you can apply it to your website. You don't have to use a template for your homework assignment. That's really completely up to you. The main thing that I'm looking for is that you have 6 web pages and that they are all consistent and uniform in design. So it's up to you how you want to keep that consistency. You can either use a template, or you can just do it with a CSS style sheet. So, but we're going to look at this template and just see how he set it up. Let's look at the header first. So you can look at the code. We have the header here, and then we've got the logo that's placed in the header. We have the navigation that's placed in the header. We have the links to each page in the navigation. And then we have our nav tags that are nested in the header. Something else you can start using is the DOM panel. So that's like the gives you the directory of management so you can see where everything is on your site, and you can move things around using the DOM panel. So if I can look and see my head, here's my body, my header is in my body tags, my navigation container is nested inside my header. And I can move that out. If I want to take my navigation out of my header, I can drag it outside of the header, and then I can drag it back in. So that kind of gives you another way of looking at your site and arranging and organizing it. So you can see that there's the image that's also inside the header in the paragraph tag. And then I can collapse the header and look at the next element on this page. So there's a div container, and it has the page content ID selector attributed to it. So if I go to CSS Designer, I can click on the page content ID selector, and if I check show set, I can see the properties that have been added for that ID selector. So under layout, I can see that this entire div container is set to 934 pixels wide. The margins are set to auto, and the margins it's the space outside of the box. And when you set it to auto, it just centers it and gives an even margin on both sides. Then if we scroll down, you can see the padding. That's the amount of inset space inside the box. So it's 20 pixels on each side. So if I put text in this box, it'll give me an inset of 20 pixels on the left and the right. And then there's an 80 pixel padding on the bottom. I can look at the text. It's formatted to this color, to this particular font family, and to this font weight. The border, there is a border, a double border set at 6 pixels using this color. There's a border radius, background color information here. So that will show you everything that has been, all the properties that have been assigned to this particular selector. And if I want to select the div, I would just go to the div ID under the properties panel, and I can select that particular page content ID selector there. So then I'm going to go to this next item here. This is a box that has the section tag wrapped around it. And then I can go here in my DOM panel and see that the main copy ID selector has been attributed to this section. So if I scroll down and look at the main copy ID selector, I can look at the properties that have been set. The width is 500, it's a minimum height of 200, the margin, padding, it's floated to the left so that items to the right will wrap around it. So you can go through and look at the styles there. And then there's a sidebar container. So this is similar to what you did in your tutorials. You had kind of a main content container box and then a sidebar one. And the sidebar, you can see in the DOM, has the sidebar ID selector attributed to that, and you can take a look at the properties for that. So you can look at the code, you can look at the selectors, you can look at the DOM panel to see how this site is organized and how you might want to rearrange things. And then we have the footer here in the footer container. So then let's take a look at these other pages on the site now. So they all have this template applied to it and just changing the content in these boxes. And some of them don't have the sidebar. And so we just have the sidebar here with the links on the About page. So I'm going to close this site out and just kind of see how you may want to set up a site. So I'm going to switch sites. I'm going to go to Manage Sites, and I've already got this site saved, so I can go ahead and delete it. And I'm going to import another site that I've created. So I'm going to go to my folder, and if you want to look at the kind of the directory of where this is, I've got my desktop, my WIP folder, then the club folder, that's the root folder for this club website, and I've got a site file, STE file saved, so I'm going to open that, click done, and then I can open up my root folder for this site. So make sure that you keep all of your files that you need for your site in that root folder, in your local root folder. And don't change things around. So don't move things into other folders once you've got it set up. If you do that and you make any changes, you're going to have to relink everything and reestablish your root directory, because those links will be broken every time that directory is changed. So I am going to open up my main page, if I can find it here. So I'm at Club HTML. This is just a basic site. I've got the header with the PNG logo inside of it. I have my navigation, and you can see my nav tags with my unordered list item, and I've got another selector. If I go to CSS Designer, I can see I've got a nav selector here, and then I've got another section here that's set to the main ID selector, and I have an image inside of that. And then if I move this around, I also have a footer. So if I view this on my browser, and I haven't formatted all of these pages, but make sure that everything is linked in all of your navigation links. Since I've got this set as a navigation element, if my screen is smaller, my text will also be reduced, and it will change with the screen size. So this site is not completely responsive, and we'll talk about that more in the next module, but when I shrink down, my image does not shrink down with the rest of the site. But I'm not worried about that right now. So I just want to have a basic website that's going to work for a basic size desktop type of size screen. So I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver, and now I'm going to go to my Files panel, and let's just say I want to start from scratch. So I'm going to close this out, and I'm going to create a new HTML page. I'm in Design View and Split View, and I want to start by inserting a header. I might want, actually I'm going to just insert a div container at the insertion point, and then I'm going to delete the text inside it. Then I'm going to place an image inside that container. So I'm going to select, I have an images folder with some images in it, but actually my logo is not in the images folder, so I'm going to select this PNG folder. I should have moved that into the images folder earlier. I'm just going to go ahead and select that, and now I've placed it inside that div container, and I want to wrap a header tag around that selection. So now if I look at my code, I've got a div with the header inside of it, and I can go to my CSS Designer, and at this point I'm going to go ahead and create a new CSS file, and I'm going to call this new styles, and click on OK. Now I want to save that into my root folder, so I'm going to have to name it again, new styles. So I've added that as a link, so you can see that showing up here in the CSS Designer panel. Then I can add a selector. So I'm just going to select a basic header tag, and I want to uncheck Show Set so I can add some properties to it. So under the type, I want to text align this centered so that I can center my content inside that header container. And then I can also use my DOM panel and see the organization there. And after my div tag, I want to insert another div at the insertion point there. And say I want to open up, using my Files panel, the text that has been provided for me from Against the Clock for this assignment. So the club copy text. And I'm going to just copy the text for my home page and paste it into that container. And then I can further format this. So let's say I go to my CSS Designer and I want to create a new ID selector, and I'm going to call it main text. And then I want to set this width to pixels. So I want to make this box 800 pixels in width. And then I have to select, and actually I'm going to go back to my insert panel and add a section tag to wrap around that selection. So now we've got the div, we've got the section tag, and now I can add that main text ID selector that I set up in CSS Designer. And I can add other properties to it. So I can go to, let's say I want to go to add some margin. So I can add a 20 pixel margin to the left and to the right. And I want to give it some padding too. So I want to give more space between the box and the header. And then maybe I want to change the typeface. So I can go to text and choose a sans serif typeface. I can also choose a bold style if I want. I can make the font size smaller. I'm going to keep this text at the medium size. I can go and create another container. So let's say I want to go back and put a container before this section. Then I can place my cursor using the code, the source code, after the div container before my section, and insert another div container at the insertion point. And so now it places it between the header and this text, the main text container. And I can plug in my navigation elements here. So my personal development page, summer tutoring, overnight adventure, volunteer, career mentoring. So I'm just not going to type everything out right now just to save time. But then I could insert a navigation element around that selection. And then I can create a new ID selector here called sidebar. And I can use the properties panel for the sidebar ID selector, and say I want to give this a width of 300, and I can float this to the right, and then I can add this sidebar selector to that element. And then I can go back. Maybe I want to make it a little bit smaller so that it fits in the space, and then also go back and give it some margin. And then I'm going to give it a padding so it's consistent with the padding of the main text box. And I can add color and change the font and continue to work with the formatting there. And I can also add an image. But this is the basic, and I can switch to live view to see it without the grids and guidelines. So that's a basic page. I can keep working with the design, but this could be my home page. And then I want to link all of these to the other pages. So I would want to create a personal development page, the summer tutoring page, overnight adventure and volunteering and career mentoring. And then I want to add I'm going to go back to design view because I want to add a home page too, so that I can always go back to the home page on every page. So now I've got the CSS style sheet, and I could also make this into a template, or I could save over this. So I could just go to File, Save As, and save this as my personal development page. I'm saving it in my root folder. I've already got that page there. So I'm actually going to open up, using my Files panel, these other pages that I've got set up. So I have my development page with the navigation. It looks funny in design view, but if I go to live view, I can see a more accurate view of how it will look in my browser. So there I've got a link to my home page on that page, and on every page in this site. So that's basically how you can start from scratch on setting up a site, an HTML page, create new HTML pages with a navigation, a header, and other elements, and make sure that your navigation is linked on every page. You want to have 6 pages, including your home page. You can use a template. If you use a template, Dreamweaver will create a templates folder and place your template in that folder, and you can apply that. Go back to the tutorial to see how you can apply a template. But you don't have to use a template for this assignment that you turn in. So just as long as your pages are consistent and you can use the CSS style sheet to maintain the consistency in the styles. So if you have any questions, we can meet in Zoom or in my office, and you're always welcome to send me an email.